Everybody, I'm Brian Daniels. I'm the communications director here for REOC. Nice to see everybody again for the second of our Roadways community working group meetings. We had a really productive meeting last week, or I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago, that had a lot of great feedback, and we certainly appreciated everybody who joined and shared their thoughts. Just very quickly for introductions on the REOC side, we have Mary Canine, acting COO for REOC, Juji Perez, Assistant Operations Director for REOC, Deputy Chief Amorosa from PSD, Mark Swanson, and Margot as well from Lero. And the agenda for this evening is we just want to go over what the possible phase 2 for the Roadways project will look like. And then maybe get a little more feedback, ask people who may have had some time to digest the last meeting if they have any other feedback they'd like to share. We sent out a questionnaire. We got a little bit of feedback from that as well that was helpful. So we can discuss all of those things. But to get it started, what I'm going to do is turn it over to Mary, who just wants to give a brief update about our ongoing bus saga, and then we will jump into the Roadways. So Mary, it's all yours.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Thanks everyone for joining tonight. Just to piggyback on what Brian said, I think the last meeting we had for Roadways was extremely productive, and we really appreciated all the feedback and the time and effort that everyone put into providing comments and information about what really needs to be prioritized on Main Street. Buses. Yeah, so we are working on it, and we understand this is a frustrating time for the community. We're doing everything we can to get our buses back up and running. What we have done is we purchased a 14-passenger 2-wheelchair shuttle bus, very similar to the Rita bus, that should arrive on site later this week, and then we will roll that out immediately. We're also very aware of the school year starting on September 5th, so we're really focused on getting service into a much better position before that time. And really a huge thank you to New York City Transit and the NTA. They've been extremely helpful in helping us navigate this time and thinking of creative solutions to improve our current situation. So big thank you to them. And we will provide an advisory at the end of this week to inform everyone on any updates regarding the buses.
I had a question or a comment.
Sure, Frank, go ahead.
Hi, Frank France, President of the Roosevelt Island Residents Association. Thank you, Mary, for that update, and thank you for paying a lot of attention to the bus service. If I could just sort of put it in numbers, I think the buses carry about 60 passengers. You know, and when you add that up, I think it's like 480 passengers an hour during the normal, what I would say the 4 or 5 bus service that we have during rush hour. And so that you can move a good 3,000 or so people in the morning and stuff. Right now, just with one bus running, and also with I've checked the app, the transit app, it says the updates are not real time, and there are times when it's not broadcasting. I don't know how that is. I'm just letting you know that there's a problem on that. I will also say that, for myself, so you've seen me limping around in the past couple of months. I'm recovering from an injury, but it's a 25-minute walk for me now, roughly at I live where Nisi is, in that building, all the way up to the garage. That's a huge and painful walk just to then get to my car, which then I have to take then to work or a doctor's appointment. Having an unreliable service like this right now, even if you had one bus, there's a way to make it reliable, and it's not reliable. And with the transit app, so for example, if I am looking at that where the bus is, I'll see it. It looks like it's at the tram, and then magically, suddenly, it appears like just beyond the subway, and then you only have really literally seconds to get to the bus stop. I think there's a problem in the routing in the transit app that doesn't actually cover your actual route for the red bus. So you probably want to talk to them about that. So northbound, it's really, it's not hit or miss. It's almost always miss. And then having to wait, sitting at the bench for a half hour to 45 minutes, almost at the point where I'd have to take an Uber, just to go from the church to the to Motorgate on that. I know I'm not the only person who has difficulty walking, and I'm not asking you to do something specific to me. I'm saying that just in general, there are a lot of consequences on this that maybe you are not aware of that really have a huge impact and our ability to do things. And that's not even getting into the schools, season. I'm happy to offline show you the problems in the transit app. And I don't know if that's a bus issue or whatever. And the other thing I would say on the buses, number 9 has an ABS failure, automatic brake system failure. And then also number 10 does also. I would just say in my opinion, this is not your opinion, but I care actually a lot about REOC. I don't want REOC to get sued, over bus accidents and, things like that. So God forbid there was something bad that happens, like we had that bus, fatality a couple of years ago, having the brake light, showing that type of failure, which is important in emergency application of the brakes, it's going to weigh in the consequences of the outcome of that. It may actually have an effect. So, that's your last bus, and I don't go, but
Frank, you seem to be fading out a little bit.
Well, I think what you need to explain to the community is more of the details, so we can understand that. Other than we're trying. I don't doubt that you're trying. It just I think we need to understand it better, because it's just not fixing that makes the buses better. So if you could think about communicating that, maybe that's that's a Brian issue rather than a Mary issue. I don't know, but that would be helpful, because really it's a critical service that's out.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate that feedback. Just going quickly to the transit app, we mentioned that it was live initially when we went down to the one bus. We said it was still kind of in the testing phase, and it kind of is. We announced it a little early because we thought at that moment it was a very important piece of the puzzle for tracking the bus that is on the island. But we have been working through kinks on that. So happy to chat with you offline about fixing that. In terms of communicating the bus situation, I know sometimes it feels like we don't have enough information. Part of it is that we want to be careful, not give out timelines that then we end up having difficulty meeting. A good example of that actually is Bus 9, how we did get it back on the road last week. And then addition to the lights that you mentioned, there was other problems, maintenance issues that immediately felled the bus. And then, we had to take it off the road for that. So what we're trying to do is, we are very understanding of how difficult it is for everybody on the island. And I can assure you, this is almost the only thing Mary's working on right now, in addition to a lot of other people. So the shuttle bus, we think it's going to be additive. And then the hope is that we will be able to get a few more buses back sooner rather than later. And when we do, we will communicate it. Hopefully the short-term pain that we're enduring now will lead to better long-term success in the future. And so that's what we're focused on. And so I'll leave it at that.
Well, thank you for making the app available. I totally agree with that decision. That was a good decision. And then so just treat my comments as like an alpha user or a beta user, friendly comments, to help, improve the things. Thank you.
We appreciate it. Yeah, thank you, Frank. Thank you for that. with that, do we want to turn to the roadways project and go into what phase 2 might look like? So last week or 2 weeks ago, I'm sorry, we spent a fair amount of time going over what phase 1 is supposed to look like. Phase 2 is projecting out a little further into the future. So I will turn it back over to Mary if she wants to go through that right now.
Yes, thanks, Brian. I'll share my screen. Thank you. So hope everybody can see my screen okay. So like Brian said, last time when we met, we discussed phase 1. So phase 1 is the area indicated in yellow. It's the helix down to the Blackwell turnaround. The main focus of phase 1 is to remove the Z-bricks and restabilize the utilities that are there and put in asphalt, as well as raised crosswalks and several other safety enhancements for pedestrians and drivers alike. Phase 2 is more part of the master plan. So there's no physical work currently planned for this part of the project. However, the master plan will be a part of the overall design, which we will have, and then we can phase this out, as the budget becomes available to make other enhancements throughout the island. So phase 2 is indicated in the blue lines here. So it's the area, basically all the area roadway outside of that Main Street space. So part of the traffic study that the contractor worked on is accounting for any new housing that was coming up on the island, because we know that we have Building 9 that is set to open in the near future, and they wanted to make sure that they accounted for that building and those residents using the roadways and also using the other mass transit spaces on the island. So these are all pedestrian numbers that were calculated using the CEQR standards to kind of also add that into their design for how we need to modify or recommend modifications to changing certain areas on Roosevelt Island. Location-specific recommendations. This was a big one. It kind of goes along with the flashing stop signs, adding in the rectangular rapid flashing beacons to highlight pedestrian crossing areas. I think the overwhelming feedback from last meeting, which we totally agree with, is any way where we can elevate pedestrian safety on the island we want to do. So these are quick fixes I think we could likely install and put in. I don't think we'll have to wait for design to do this. And there's other recommendations that they added here below. So the signs, revise the distance between stop signs and stop lines to meet current standards, adding curb ramps where it's needed, some pavement treatments, and then bollards to help separate bicycles and vehicles. So starting from the south end of the island, this is the bollards that were mentioned on the previous slide. So the entrance on the east side of South Point Park, we do have some drivers that occasionally make their way into South Point Park without paying attention to the signs. And, from looking at it, it does look like a pretty welcoming driveway. So the advice would be to add bollards there to prevent that and protect the pedestrians and the cyclists that could be inside the park. And also adding that on the west side as well. And the pedestrian crossing signs like were mentioned in the previous slide. Going around West Loop Road all the way to South and North Loop. So adding pedestrian crossings so that there's more awareness. It's more highlighted to drivers that there could be pedestrians in that area. Adding new stop lines located 4 feet in front of each crosswalk, and then adding more of the flashing beacons. So just highlighting that area even more. And I know we installed speed bumps along the east side, which have helped to slow down drivers. So potentially we can look into adding some more of those. West Road approaching Main Street. I'm really interested in everyone's opinion and feedback on this. So there was recommendation to potentially remove the parking along this west side area. So this is the area just to give you some directional markers. So Starbucks is right here. This is the area, West Road, that leads up to then the meditation lawn and then Blackwell Park. So the idea being removing the parking along there, making that a two-way road, so that way you'd have more traffic flow. One of the other recommendations the design firm had was to reverse the one-way. So instead of having it be a one-way going north, it could be a one-way going south, so that the loop around the island came down along the west side, and then you had the two-lane on the interior part of Main Street. The route it would route pedestrians to the walking path along the river, potentially giving them more land to roam along that side. Main Street at River Road and the north intersection, so adding pedestrian cross. We can make, but we wanted to share them nonetheless to know that, so that you knew we were looking into it. This is the area by in between Octagon and Kohler. So the recommendation is to put in a sidewalk curb, stop sign, pedestrian crossing, and then move the line for the stop line up a bit, so that there's a little bit more room for pedestrians, more safety for anyone that is crossing this intersection here. This is near the tennis courts when you're turning onto Octagon. So relocating the stop signs and the Octagon sign and creating more of a turning radius. You can see in this picture here, pinching the curb in so that there's a bit more room for vehicles to make those turns. We have buses that make those turns regularly, and when they come out of Octagon, they go completely into the opposing lane. So that would be a good way to prevent that from happening. And then having the stop sign as well moved up so that it's a bit safer. Yeah, so they don't run over the curb there. From the East Road and Octagon Dog Run, so this is right along near the east side of Kohler by that parking lot. So adding more markings so that vehicles are aware they're coming to a roundabout and would not be able to travel further. And then pedestrians would have a bit more safety mechanisms there so that they could safely walk and continue north to Lighthouse Park. This is over in between Octagon and Kohler again. So putting in a curb ramp. I'm not sure why there wasn't one put in originally, but as you can see from the photo, there's no curb ramp on either side. So installing a curb ramp and putting in a crosswalk there where there currently is none. This one in the same area, adding a double yellow center line to delineate the two-way traffic flow. I know this roadway is pretty tight, but we can definitely add those center divider lines to better queue up traffic. And this is the crosswalk. So this one was completed. This design master plan was looked at before this crosswalk was installed. So this was installed earlier this year in the spring. So happy to say we can check this one off the list. That is it. That is what we have today. It's a bit of a shorter presentation. The main focus again being phase 1, Main Street, and this would be the larger master plan.
Thanks, Mary. Do we have any questions about the presentation? Okay. Oh, Vicky, yeah.
I think you're muted, Vicky.
Yeah, again, for some reason, I can't unmute. So Vicky, if you can unmute yourself, just go next to your name and hit the microphone. While we wait for Ricky, Rick, do you want to go? Vicky, Rick, do you want to go?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So just what did you just have you made any decisions regarding what to do about the parking on the removing some of the parking between Starbucks and the tram and the changing the traffic patterns, or is that those are just options right now?
This is an option provided by the design team. So we wanted to get feedback to see what the community thought of that option.
Okay. Would the sidewalks be expanded at all, or is it just removing parking for another lane of traffic?
It would just be removing parking for another lane of traffic.
Okay. Any thought of expanding the sidewalks at all?
We could look into that.
Because it's kind of crowded there.
Mm-hmm.
And you can really only walk, I guess, 2 abreast over there. And sometimes it does, people have mentioned that it gets crowded there. So just something to think about.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point. I've experienced that too, that walkway going towards the tram. If you get 2 or 3 people walking next to each other, then it blocks the whole sidewalk. That's a good point.
And what's the time frame for implementing any changes?
So for implementing changes, we'd like to get feedback from the community within the next couple of weeks, because we do want to get back to the design firm so they can continue working on the next phase of design, which again, more focused on phase 1 in Main Street. So that way we can keep that project moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Vicky, there you go.
Yeah, some of the things that Rick was talking about was what I was interested in. So on the side, the Southtown buildings going west, that street, going from the beginning of Southtown to the tram, it's very, very narrow. And people are constantly, now they're going on the grass and walking, or they're going, all different. It's just too narrow. So I just wanted to mention that. And if there was anything, at that time that we can do, I think it would be easier for people. But more and more people are here and walking, and it needs to be widened. And that's it.
Thank you, Vicky. We appreciate that feedback.
Sure.
I just want to quickly go over the highlights. So we sent a survey out after the first meeting that we got a little bit of feedback on from the attendees. Just some of the high level stuff that came back in that survey. What we found was the most important facet of the phase 1 project was fixing crosswalks for pedestrians and adding traffic calming measures. Responses about maintaining parking spots on Main Street range from not all that important to get rid of as many parking spots as you can. 2/3 of the participants who responded would prefer to get rid of Z-bricks and find safer solutions. And then in terms of what wasn't addressed during the presentation that they would like us to consider, and this came up in the last meeting, daylighting of crosswalks was one of them, moving stop lines further back, focusing on loading zones for disabled riders and having priority spaces for them on Main Street, and then signage, enforcement, and other measures to curb dangerous and illegal driving by motorized 2-wheel vehicles. And actually on that level, Anthony, I don't know if you want to just make mention of it. It's kind of been an important initiative for PSD in the last few weeks. Do you just want to touch on that real quick?
Yeah, we definitely heard at the last meeting about the motor scooters and the motorbikes that are constantly driving on the island recklessly and not obeying the stop signs. So we kind of did an initiative, and within the last 2.5 months, we have seized and vouched unauthorized motor scooters that have been coming to the island. 10 were for reckless driving. and reckless driving being, traveling at high speeds and not obeying more than 3 traffic signals. So in other words, those delivery scooters that are just going right through the stop signs, and not stopping, that we had some complaints of people almost getting hit by them or driving on the sidewalk. So we've actually been taking them into the 114 and we've been vouchering them. We did one today, actually. And then 3 out of the 13 were actually unauthorized people with no licenses. That were doing deliveries, driving these motorized scooters and unlicensed operators. So we're definitely paying attention to that. We've gotten a lot of complaints about that. So we did start a little bit of an initiative, to do as much enforcement as possible. We tried a lot of education with them in the beginning. Chief is real big with educating them of what they can do and can't do with that. And that didn't seem to work. It was the same offenders constantly over and over again. And the 114 is actually very happy with us because it's like, hey, you guys can do this off the island for us because we're having some issues over in Astoria. So we're trying to make it safer so that no one gets hit by one of these motor scooters. And I know that was brought up at the last meeting. So we're going to continue to do that, and hopefully that they get the message that if they come onto the island, or even some of the stores that are doing deliveries on the island, that they have to stop at the stop signs, they have to drive at a moderate speed, and they have to be licensed and registered vehicles.
Thank you. I'll go Frank. Your hand raised. Okay, Frank's muted, so we'll go back to Frank.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now, Frank. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mary, for the extended presentation there and seeing some new stuff. So number one is on the displaced stop line on the, I'll call it by the tennis courts. That is actually necessary. I don't think you're going to make it by shaving off the corner there because the turning radius, they really do need that turning radius. And if you don't provide that, then you get into the deadlock situation where the only way to resolve the 2 drivers is one has to back up or possibly turn on the north end of the island. And I think that's counterintuitive. So I think you'd need that just because especially you have buses, traveling that. If it was just, regular cars, it would be a different story. On the, there's an area at the, I guess I call it the turnaround here, right by the Blackwell House. I want you to think about, potentially crosswalks on that. So when that was designed many years ago, the island was a certain population and a certain way with a certain number of buildings. And I think there's now pedestrian movement that actually crosses that intersection from the west side to the east side. And what they do is they go through the heart of that turnaround there, or whatever that intersection's called. Because it's not, I don't know what it's called anyway, the intersection. And so if you added a crosswalk from, there's a garbage can there on the Rivercross lawn side to right across the street where the Blackwell house is, right at the stop sign there, then that would allow the pedestrians to cross properly. And then I'm guessing they walk down to the tram, from that perspective. Otherwise, right now they go through the middle of the intersection, and that's a potential safety issue. One thing I'd like you to also consider, speaking of safety issues, is the turnaround. The stop sign at the firehouse. This is northbound. Okay. What would be useful there is to treat that whole turnaround there at the firehouse as one intersection, so it had a a place to cross on both southbound side and northbound side, and then you could treat it and control it as a turnaround, and then also you'd have place to put a northbound bus stop for the for McManus Field there, because there people want to get off there, and there's no place really for them to get off to go to the field there. So that's a consideration. Regarding so when I did a survey on the island here of nighttime traffic and the crosswalks, that was back in 2013, and I did that and took I got a lot of video on that, and I've told you go down to Food Town and you'll see that's a really bad intersection, a bad crosswalk there, because as a motorist, not as a pedestrian, as a motorist, you don't see the pedestrians because of the lighting. It turns out what's changed between then and now is that we have all of these halogen lights, which we did not have back in 2013. And what that does is cause the eyes to have basically to close up because you're dealing with something very bright. And even now in Main Street, if I have headlights in front of me, I can't even see 5 to 8 feet away, and I'm sitting at a pedestrian crosswalk like at the 510 crosswalk. So what we need is lighting, some type of lighting that lights up the people in the crosswalk there. So that's what I got. Oh, the last one was on the parking that Rick had mentioned. So back in 2013, I had done a study on this. There's actually room for parking on the east side of Main Street next to the even numbered buildings. Okay. It's 40 foot in width, and I went out and measured that. So if you want to see a road that's identical to that, go to 34th Avenue in Vernon. 34th Avenue is exactly the same width. They have parking on both sides, and it allows bus service in both directions on that. And so that would give you additional parking spots that would be helpful for Southtown. And then as for the turning it into two-way on the other side on West Road, again, this was something that was studied extensively back in 2005 to 2007. The reason for the one-way the way it is because in the wintertime, which we're not in the wintertime, so we don't feel the pain, is that in the wintertime, people are able to stay in an enclosed place waiting for the bus, where when they tried it up on Main Street, it just was unacceptable for people to wait out in the open in the cold. So that's the history, as to why that was. And that was two-way at one point. The area where the parking, where the trucks loaded, right next to the ventilation shaft, that was actually the southbound red bus stop at that point. But there was concern that because people were crossing there, that it would create a traffic hazard for pedestrians, as one bus northbound and another bus southbound were both docked there, and that's the reason why the flow was the way it became one way and one way northbound on that. I'm not saying you can't change it. I'm just saying I'm trying to give you some of the information, from prior work and prior knowledge, so you're aware of some of the considerations. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. We appreciate the feedback and the history there. Very helpful for us. Rick, you had your hand raised?
It's just about the motor scooters that are causing the problems. I guess they're mostly the deliveries they're making deliveries. And are they mostly coming from like a Uber Eats, or are they coming from specific restaurants?
A lot. It's a mixture of Rick. It's some of the Uber Eats and some are restaurants. We have a couple of repeat offenders from the restaurants. And I personally have gone and spoke to the management of those specific ones that are repeat offenders. So trying to handle it in a a very diplomatic way to make them understand, listen, you guys are a part of this island, you got to provide, safety with this island. So hopefully that message gets heard, but it's kind of a mixture. But we were actually, this is a safety initiative. It's right. These guys, me and the chief, we're taking a walk up throughout the whole island. We've been doing it frequently, and we're seeing these motor scooters just not pay attention to the stop signs and just go through. And something had to be done about it. And Chief Brown was like, "We're going to be full enforcement with this," and it's working. I mean, we've gotten 13 of them, and the 114 is ecstatic about it because they're very happy that they don't have to send somebody here, and they're thinking about doing something on their side. Because it's a problem citywide. I mean, you go into Manhattan and
Right.
it's really a dangerous situation. So
But there also, I guess, there needs to be a balance. I mean, you don't want anything jeopardizing safety, but a lot of people really enjoy getting deliveries from, a store
Right.
in Long Island City.
Hey, Rick,
You know,
I get you, but
Yeah.
you know what? They got to do it safely. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Yeah, of course.
I get when I try to stop anyone's deliveries, but if someone gets hit by one, people would be the first to say that, we allowed them to drive recklessly on the island. So you can make deliveries, you can do every job safely and,
Right.
and obeying the law. And that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to stop deliveries. Let me make that perfectly clear. We're not trying to stop people from getting their food deliveries, make it difficult for their food deliveries, have people not want to come to the island. We're just trying to make it safe for the people that reside here and visit here so that they do not get hit by these scooters and injured. So that's what the initiative is. It's a safety initiative. And we've gotten numerous complaints about them. So what we're doing is we're enforcing it now.
Good. All right, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. I don't know if we have anything else we want to go through on this particular call. If there's any sort of final thoughts on either the first presentation or what we had tonight, we're happy to hear them, take all the information back. And then I think, as Mary said, the next step would be maybe go to design. Is that right, Mary?
Yep. So next step, we would go through and
Oh, we lost Mary for a second. What a cliffhanger moment.
While Mary's frozen, also, just so you guys know, we're gonna, for our September engagement meeting for PSD, we're gonna be talking a lot about, about that, what we talked about today.
When is that going to be?
Did we get a date officially yet, Brian?
I believe it's going to be the 17th, Tuesday the 7th. I think that Tuesday is the 17th. Let me double check real quick. Yes, Tuesday the 17th will be the date of the next one. I'm sorry, Mary, go ahead.
am I back? Am I unfrozen?
You're unfrozen.
Okay.
With a funny face, you got frozen.
Yeah, I hope it wasn't a weird face. Apologize if it was. Yes, so the next step would be moving forward with the design team so they could continue to the next phase for this project. And I was just curious, was the survey helpful for everyone as a good way to provide your feedback? It was great for us, but I wanted to see how it was for everyone that filled it out.
I thought it was well done.
Yeah, it's another avenue to get some information and sort of the feel for how folks are doing in addition to these calls. So, we can continue down that path. I'm not sure exactly what the future cadence of this working group meeting would be. I guess it would make sense to go back to design, see where they come up with, and then pick it up again maybe after that point.
Yeah.
All right, so why don't we do that? We'll obviously keep everybody in the loop about what the plans are for the future meetings. Let me also just mention real quick, Rick, we're doing back giveaway Friday. So that's nice.
Great
want-
coverage, Rick.
I'll do it.
There you go. All right. I think that's
I
it
did
for
a
us.
national night out.
Okay,
And we appreciate it.
thank you.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody. Thanks so much for the participation and helping us out here. And we will
Thank you.
be in touch. Take care.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thanks
Have
for
a good
coming.
night.
We appreciate
Take care.
everyone
Good night.
coming. We
Bye.
appreciate that.
Bye.
Thank you.